Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you are. I'm very happy to see all of you here today because today we prepared a lot of good and useful materials for you guys so that you can definitely receive this job offer from the top leading consulting firm. I'm also very excited because today we prepared this webinar in collaboration with the Erasmus University, and please very welcoming the head of Erasmus Consulting Club, Ojas Mahajan, and our candidate today, Ali Mirmozi. And last but not least, CEO of the company and also the coach, Andrei Hamolenko. So please very welcoming. I'm Alessia. I'm a client manager of Consulting Masters, and today I'm going to moderate this webinar. So let me tell you the agenda today. The webinar will last just 60 minutes, and in the end, we're going to make a Q&A session. So first of all, we'll give you some information about our company, structure and approach to the case interview. Of course, we're going to make live case interview simulation. And after that, we're going to share with you some feedback and additional tips and tricks. So now let me pass the word to Andrea, the CEO, the coach of the company. So please, very welcome. Hello, Andrea. How are you doing today?
Hello, Alessia. Thank you very much for a brief introduction. And hello, everyone visiting our webinar. I want to also pass the welcoming word to Oyas, who is the organizer and co-host of the webinar. So dear Oyas, thank you very much for making this event happening. Maybe you could also say a few words to open it up.
Hey, thanks, Andre. Yeah, I'm hoping, let's see in the chat, like few people here are completely new to this, whether it's case cracking or consulting. So I hope this session is the first step towards consulting, and probably it will help them a lot.
Thank you very much for a brief intro. So I also want to share one of the stories, most recent successes of one of our mentees. His name is Fernando. He completed an MBA at ISA Business School, but he was considering himself to be too much experienced for a consulting role because he used to work 12 years in the steel industry, and therefore he was not really very sure whether consulting was the right thing for him and whether he can actually make it. And we helped him actually all the way through all the stages, through the CV, cover letter preparation, with a networking to arrange his interviews, with referrals, with preparing for all the stages of the interview process, both behavioral, fit part, as well as the case part of the interview. And consequently, he actually passed through all the stages of the interviews, and he accepted the offer from McKinsey in Panama and joined the company last year. By the way, last week on Friday, we also used to have our first alumni meeting. So subscribe to our YouTube channel and you can watch the recording. So let us then jump directly into the content part from the interviewer consultant perspective. Every interview consists of three main parts. Number one is personal fit part and behavioral part. This is basically when the interviewer tries to assess your personality, asks you some very common questions about your background, about your CV, about your motivation for consulting, or about specific situations, how you were, for example, solving conflict or showing your leadership skills or showing your problem-solving skills or creating an impact. Then in the second part of the interview, which we are going also simulate today, the interviewer will be solving a case of the candidate. And then the last 5 to 7 minutes of the interview, the candidate has a chance to ask interviewer a few questions about him or herself or about the company which the interviewers represent. So, and this is typically covered in 45 to 60 minutes. So far, so good. Then let's go to the next page. Let me now explain you what are and give you some very rational tips about how to solve the cases. Every case part of the interview, you need to follow 5 very simple steps to solve every case. First of all, when the interviewer will ask you as a candidate a question, your main job is to paraphrase this question in order to make sure that you totally understood it. Then, before jumping to the next time, don't rush too much. Make sure that you ask enough clarifying questions to really understand the objectives of the case. And only then take the time to outline your structure or your approach. present it to the interviewer, show it to him or her, align on it, and then carry on with their analysis, both quantitative and qualitative. First, the data, summarize it, work with that, and then finally complete back to the interview. So these are the 5 very logical steps. Then let's move on. Now let's have a look into what are the good questions or what are the bad questions. If I can only give you the tip, so like after you have recorded the structure and recorded the case question and paraphrased it, make sure that you might be asking about 3-4 things. First of all, figure out what is the business model of the company. Basically, in other words, how does it make money? Especially if you don't understand the company. If you are not familiar with the industry, for example, oil and gas, if you are not a specialist, make sure you understand that business model. Second, make sure that you clarify the specific objectives of the case, because some cases might be having one specific objective or 2 or 3 or sometimes even more, and make those objectives measurable. Just to give you an example, if we're talking about profitability, then okay, by how much would you like to improve the profitability and until when? So basically, what is the KPI and what is the metrics and the time frame? Or you may, the type 3, you may ask every specific question on the product or market. And by the way, later on in the simulation with Ali, we will show you how to do it. I hope so, Ali. So I hope that he will ask me a few clarifying questions. Otherwise, I would need to stop. Then make sure that whenever you take your time after asking all those clarifying questions, that you take your time to outline a proper structure and present it to the interview. There is one consulting term that you need to become familiar with. This is namely missing. Missing stays for mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive. It basically means that your structure should be complete and comprehensive and exhaustive, so that it should contain the answers to all the case questions or case objectives that you have figured out in the previous exercise. So for example, if we're looking into profitability always consists of revenues and costs. And revenues, you might be splitting into revenue per unit multiplied by units sold. And of course, also revenue might be divided into P times Q. So basically quantity multiplied by price. Costs, there are several costs like variable and fixed costs. There are different measures how you can segment both efforts, both with the revenues and costs, but they should be building together the one thing, namely the profitability. So make sure that your structure is exhaustive. And then when you are presenting your structure, you are showing the interviewer that you can basically double check whether this structure makes sense to the interviewer. And if it's okay, then you would like to start with the first bucket, for example, unless the interviewer prefers you to start somewhere else. Then you would like to say that I would like to analyze XYZ. Do you have any data on that? And with this statement, you clearly emphasize it to the interviewer that you are able to drive the case, because this ability to drive the case by yourself without any guidance from the interviewer is one of the key parameters that I, as an interviewer, used to assess in the candidates in the past to either pass them by or no pass, basically. Now, imagine that you have basically asked the interviewer with the data, for the data, and the interviewer started sharing some of the data with you. Then there are a few steps which you need to go through whenever you are solving the case bucket by bucket. It's typically you have stated your hypothesis and approach, and then you have moved on with the first bucket. Then you start conducting qualitative or quantitative analysis in order to find the reason, the root cause of the problems, and to identify and to solve it. You also sometimes would need to segment the data. And then, for example, for the first, if you're working on revenues, if you have already analyzed all the revenue streams, you have figured out you need to summarize the outcomes of your analysis before moving to the next bucket, which could be, for example, a cost bucket. In that case, make sure as you are analyzing every bucket, you need to summarize it or do intermediate summaries after every bucket. And then outline like, okay, now we analyzed the first bucket, so let's move on to the second bucket. And in the second bucket, again, you say, like, I want to analyze like first, second, I want to analyze A, B, and C. Do you have any data on that? And you again repeat your analysis and you're finding your outcomes. Then you summarize it all. And at some point of time, after you have analyzed everything, it's probably the time for you to sum up the solution and to provide with the necessary recommendation. My very practical tip, I am a consultant. What I would have done in your case, I would ask the interviewer again for a moment of time, and I would then review the case objectives. Basically, what did I need to figure out initially? And then, having this in the loop, I would basically prepare the pitch, which should be just about 60 to 90 seconds maximum. So like elevator pitch, be very brief and concise. So I would restate in that pitch the case question and objectives. I would then formulate a brief recommendation for each objective, supported by some facts like 2 to 5 points or which I figure out during my analysis. Mention some potential risks. It's optional if they are available, but definitely outline the next steps. And then ask the interviewer a question. Like, do you have any questions? So for example, if it was a profitability case, I would basically say, first of all, thank you very much for this interesting case. Our objective was to figure out how we can increase the profitability by 11% in the next 2 years. And I would recommend you A, B, and C as potential measures because of XYZ, I don't know, ABC, DEF, GFY that we figure out during our analysis. However, we need to bear in mind that the potential risks might be 1 and 2. And I propose that moving forward, we would need to focus on 1, 2, and 3. Do you have any questions? This is just an example for you of a real recommendation. I also want to warn you, there are 5 very common mistakes which most of the candidates are doing, why they are basically not receiving their jobs, especially what makes them fail. So I go just one by one and try to explain. You know, like second case interviews already come in with the second part of the interview. And I would say I have met so many candidates. They come to me and say, Andre, I need your help or the help of your company with practicing cases. My first question is like, how good is your personal fit? Because so many people are underestimating the personal fit part of the interview, which even McKinsey and BCG have admitted 2 years ago that personal fit part of the interview is equally important as the case part. So it's basically, it's 50% of the success criteria is in the personal fit part and 50 in the case part. But if you bump the personal fit part, you missed it out completely. You already come in short and stressed through the personal fit, and you are not starting the case from the right foot. Then, if you are not following the process of the case solving, which I described to you initially with 5 steps, especially if you are not asking clarifying questions, you have no chance to understand what the case is all about. And consequently, you are not able to develop the structure which is covering all the components. And therefore, you're doubting in yourself. You're not able to drive the case. So this is like, you know, if you do the first mistake, you do then automatically probably the second and the third and the fourth and the fifth. And then, yeah, there is a clear outcome why 99% of all the applicants got rejected and only 1% actually succeeds and receives the offer. Ali, does this sound familiar to you? Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I could see. I had the experience. Yeah, I had the experience of doing this kind of interviews, and yeah, I could relate to almost all of the points that you mentioned here.
All right. Let's then basically also see on the next page. I think it's also time for us to share some very practical tips with you. This is probably one of the most important charts because your consulting interview is all about having the right behavior, the right attitude, and the right mindset. So these tips and recommendations, They are vitally important for your success. They are the differentiators between being a part of this 99% who got rejected and being 1% who got actually the job offer. So first of all, you need to like it and you need to really enjoy the whole process. You are already invited, which means that the company is willing to invest time and efforts in you and actually wants to see you as a successful candidate. No one wants to waste time. Then in the real interview, please, by all means, try to be very friendly, very enthusiastic, and very proactive. Drive the discussion. Don't just sit back and lie back. Then remember, no one is really wanting to harm you. People might be thrilling you or trying to put you in the stressful situation simply to see whether you are able to handle stressful situations which might be happening with you and with other colleagues on the client side. But you need to remember that whoever the interviewer is sitting in front of you, he or she might become your future potential colleague. So imagine that you are taken to the celebrity and basically that you are trying to make a first very positive impression to someone and show your genuine interest in that interview and curiosity about problem solving, that no matter what kind of difficulty or the problem you get, you are totally enjoying it. And if it doesn't work from one angle, then try a different one. Change your approach, but go for it. And always drive the discussion. This is so vitally important. Then last but not least, think out loud and explain every step. If you struggle, then make a summary, take a step back and take the problem from a different angle. And smile, laugh, and stay cool. This is always plays good and in your favor. Ali, would you maybe like to briefly introduce yourself before we start the simulation and tell the participants a little bit more about yourself?
Hello. Yes, I think most of the participants are from the school, so they probably know me. But yes, so Ojas and I are both co-presidents of the Strategy and Consulting Club. I had around 5 years of experience in consulting before, and I'm happy to help perhaps showing how a case should be done. Not because I know how to do it, but maybe the other way. Maybe with the things that I do but shouldn't do, I can help others to understand how it should be done.
All right, cool. Can I maybe ask you to turn on your cameras and to cheer up Ali for doing the case for you and cheer him up?
You've got this, Ali. Let's go.
Go, 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 Ali. You will make it.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Then let's start with the simulation. So I will be playing, I would say, let's imagine that you would like to join one of the leading consulting companies. As you are coming from the Middle East, Ali, I also have taken one of the cases from the region. By the way, it is a real one, which was given to one of our candidates in the past. And I have a following question to you. Ali, could you please estimate what is the size of the bed mattresses market in Dubai?
All right. The case is about coming up with the market size of the bed mattresses in the city of Dubai, and not the whole UAE, but only in Dubai.
Yeah. Right.
All right. So by the market size, do you mean in value or the number of mattresses?
I mean both. Let's find out what is the number of bed mattresses, total number, and then see the dirham value, which is the local currency.
And in this market sizing practice, I'm wondering if there should be a difference between the size of the mattresses, or for the sake of simplicity, we're taking all of them as one. I mean, like double or single.
Yeah, these are the two different mattresses.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, can I take a couple of minutes to structure the case?
Yeah, sure. Please take your time. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, while Ali is working on his structure, please write down into the comments what kind of questions, clarifying questions would you have asked, and what kind of approach would you have done, so that we can review it later on.
Okay, so I want to look at this case and I want to structure this case in a 2x2. So in one of the axes, I'm looking at type of customers, let's say, or users, which are, I would separate them in households and businesses. And perhaps I can even break businesses down into smaller categories, like, for example, hotels, hospitals, perhaps, or other type of hospitality or let's say public businesses. And on the other axis, I would look at the size of the beds. So we have, in that case, we would have 4 type of mattresses for household, single and double, for businesses also single or double. Do you think it makes sense?
Okay. Anything else that you would like to take into consideration?
Yeah, I could say so. For each of them, then we need to know the number or we need to have like an estimate of the number and the price of the mattresses for each of these categories. So I don't know do we have any information about that?
Yeah, for sure we will. I can share the information later on. But in terms of the structure, what are the components that you want to take into consideration? Or can you just walk me through your logic completely?
Yeah, so if you want to have the market size, we need to look at the number and the price, because at the end, the whole market in terms of value would be the multiplication of the number of mattresses and the average price per each, perhaps. And then based on the number of mattresses that we can sell, we need to figure that out. We need to look at, okay, what are our customer segments or who are buying these mattresses? Also, another thing that I think I need to know is that, are we looking at like an annual market, or so the time is also another factor here?
We're looking on the annual market.
Annual market. Okay. Yeah. So then in that case, we can have an assumption on how often people buy mattresses. So to have like the number of mattresses sold in a year. So that is another thing that we need to know. And then based on that, we can come up with the total market size, I would say.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're looking to.
Okay. So
where shall we start, Ollie?
So I would say I want to start from the households, and I want to know if you know the number of households in Dubai and perhaps the average number of persons per household.
Okay, so from the data that we have, it's basically the population of Dubai about 3.5 million people, and roughly 2.5 persons live in a household in Dubai on average.
2.5 people per household, yeah?
Right, precisely.
So in that case, I would say that to come up with the number of mattresses in a household, I would say 2 of these 2.5 of people are perhaps partners or like the parents of that household, which get 1 king or double size bed. And then on average per household, we have half a person, and then we need to multiply this by the number of households, which we can get by dividing 3.5 by 2.5.
And what do you get?
3.5, 2.5, it's almost 1.5, 1.25, I would say. And then, so we will have 1.25 approximately for double beds, and approximately 0.6 million for single beds. Do we have any data on how often households change their mattresses, or I need to make an assumption?
I was actually waiting for this question. Households replace their mattresses every 5 years.
Okay, so in that case, we need to divide this number, which is around 1.9 by 5, which will be around 400,000 mattresses per year for the household part. Yeah, for the household section. But yeah, we need to also take into account that from this 400K, 250K is double and 150K is single, approximately. Do we have the average price for each type of mattress or no?
We don't have that information, but we have a different price range category. So the economy mattresses cost about 100 or 400 dirham, so roughly 100 US dollars per mattress. Then I would say the typical normal class mattress ranges at about 500 to 600 US dollars, and expensive mattresses costs at about 1,200 US dollars per mattress.
How much for expensive? 1,200
US dollars. So 100, then 500 or 600, and then 1,200.
Mm-hmm. This is only for the single, or on average for single and double?
Yes, it's for the single. For the double mattress, you may simply
multiply by 2.
Multiply by 2.
All right. Okay. So in that case, I would assume that on average, people would take those kind of typical mattresses because, it also includes both economy and more expensive ones. But I would say perhaps on average, it's more or less the same as the typical. So I guess the upper part of it, which is 600, since there is a large gap between typical and expensive mattresses, I would take the upper limit of that. And then in that case, we would have, I have all of the information that I need for the household part. Then I would go to the business side. It's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. So on businesses, I would say perhaps the highest number of mattresses in those businesses are perhaps hospitals and hotels. Do we have any information on the number of these businesses in Dubai?
Yes, you're absolutely right. Hospitals and especially hotels are the big businesses operating with mattresses. And let's just focus on the hotel business itself. And I can share the information that every year, roughly 18 million people are visiting Dubai.
80, yeah?
No, 18.
Yeah, okay. 18 people, 18 million,
So Dubai is among top 10 most visited cities in the world currently.
Yeah, good. All right. 18 million people. All right. So it means that 18 million beds in hotels, more or less. Do the hotels also change their mattresses on the same, as often as the households, 5 years, or is it different?
It's every 3 years. It's very good that you are so attentive to details.
All right. So I would say that would lead us to 6 million mattresses per year, but 18 million people across the year. So it means that on average, it's not 18 million. So it should be 9 million on average. Yeah.
Why 9?
So you're right. It should be 18 million on average per night. It's getting tricky because now we need to know the average stay per person as well. No?
Mm-hmm. You can basically assume that average person stays 6 nights and there are 360 days in the year. However, please take into consideration high and low seasons.
So 18 million people, 6 nights per person. So it would be 3 million. Let's say, it's getting a bit hard.
No one said it would have been easy.
Yeah. Yes. All right. I need to think about it a bit.
Can you maybe think out loud?
Yeah. So I'm thinking we have 360 days per year and then 60 nights per person. So it will give us, am I thinking correct or not? Because I need to realize what is the average, what is the number of rooms being occupied by these 18 million people in a year? Because I need to...
How many rooms do you need?
Yeah, how many rooms? And then from that, I can get into how many beds, not how many rooms.
Or basically, can you just figure out what are how many people are staying in Dubai as visitors at every single point of time? Because obviously not all 18 millions are coming the same day.
Yeah, so in that case, I think we can say, 18 million divided by 360, yeah? Am I right?
Divided by 360? Anything else that you forgot? What about 6 nights?
Yeah, and then again divided by 6. So it should be 18 divided by 60, I would say.
Yes, that would be better.
Yeah, 18 divided by 60 would be 1.8 divided by 6. It would be 300K mattresses for the hotels. And then,
and what about if you take into consideration the seasonality in low seasons?
Yeah, and lows. I mean, this should be the average, no? The seasonality, it can be more during the high season and lower during the low seasons, but this is kind of the average number of beds. So hotels are fully booked almost during high seasons. Yeah. Yeah. So do we know what is the difference in terms of number of visitors during high and low seasons?
Well, most of the visitors are actually coming in for months that are considered to be high season, and therefore the utilization and capacity changes significantly to the summer months. All right, good. But let's basically jump into concluding the case. So if you just do the calculations with the numbers, what are you coming with?
Okay, can I have some time to do the calculations? We have 600 dirhams, and here divided by 3, which should be 100K. 600 would be 600K and 60 million. Yeah, so 100K, that's for the business. And we have we have 250K doubles, which means 500K for household doubles, and then 150K for household single, which is 650. So in terms of number of mattresses, I would say it will be 750K. And in terms of price, if we get the average price at 600, it will be just 700 multiplied by 750K multiplied by 600, which will be 65345. So it will be 45 million dirhams.
What do you think about this number? Is it safe or small, or what would you say? Does it make sense?
45 million. So if the whole market is 45 million, you mean does it make sense for the whole market to be 45 million in Dubai? I think it should be even more. I think it's 450 million. Yeah.
That sounds more reasonable.
I just missed 10. I think
Okay. Ali, let's imagine that the CEO of the company is coming in a few minutes. What would you recommend?
In terms of what? What would I recommend in what term? Because there wasn't a company. Sorry, I cannot get it, because the case was just do a market size. There wasn't any background about a company whose CEO is coming now. Yeah. Am I getting it right, or I'm missing something? Who's the CEO of each company?
Let's basically imagine that the CEO or one of the decision makers from the client side is coming. So basically the client is coming. And how would you conclude the case?
Then I need to also know if the question is if they should enter the market or not. Then I should also know the competitive landscape as well. How many players are there in the market? If they're just entering the market because of the size, then it wouldn't be a case for it. In that case, I need more information about various aspects of the market.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Let's basically stop the simulation here. And I just want to welcome all the participants back. So please turn on your cameras again. And let's cheer up Ali for his performance during the case. So,
thank you. Thank you very much.
Chapeau, from my side.
Good work.
Yeah. My congratulations. That was actually pretty good. And okay, so Over the last hour, you have learned the peculiarities of the consulting case interview and how to successfully solve the cases. I think that Ali gives a pretty solid example, even though it was not all 100% clear, but it still was a very, very realistic simulation. And you also need to know that me and Ali, we didn't do the sparring before that. So it was not bad for the first time. I would also be interested to see how did you perceive that. But anyway, guys, you also learn what are the most common mistakes and how you can get your offers from the leading consulting companies, and what is the winning attitude and behavioral tips during the consulting interview. But now there is a question. What are you going to do next? Do you want to further go into webinars, or do you want to prepare on your own? Or how do you make it a step forward? Do you want to do all the mistakes by yourself, or do you want to rely on some professionals to help you out to get you to the network? Do you want to use help of those people who already worked in consulting, who have brought 590 mentees into consulting? Do you want to benefit from our consulting network? Or do you want to become a part of community and secure your interview invites and convert them into offers with a guarantee that you will be at your best during the interview days? Listen also to one of the stories of our client, Ahmed Shamsuddin, which he wants to share with you about his own experience of working with us. Yeah, I also say a huge thank to Ahmed. It's been a great pleasure to work with him, and even despite all those COVID, I think it has been a very tremendous outcome that we were able to deliver together. And I just want to encourage you, make your first step in your consulting career already today. Book a free consultation with Alessa Kim, our client manager. Use this Calendly chat. She's not biting. She's a very young and charming lady, doing a lot of yoga and fitness.
Thank you, Andre.
And even playing tennis this morning. But she's more than happy to help you on your first way into consulting. And now I just want to discuss with you moving forward the feedback about Ali, about the case, as well as all your questions during that interactive Q&A session.
Yes.
Ali, by the way, how was the case for you? How did you perceive it?
It was actually very interesting because at first I thought that it's gonna be an easy one, but the deeper I would go into it, then you can see, okay, there are some hidden corners in it. So it was a pretty interesting case. Thanks for the experience. I think it was, I hope that it was also helpful for our colleagues here to see how the case can go.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I just want to pass the first word to Sarim.
Thank you, Andre and Ali, for this really nice case study simulation. I actually quite enjoyed it. I had something similar in my MBA last year, where we had to calculate the market size of skis in Bavaria. So it was quite interesting. My question here is, of course, as we saw how the more deeper Ali went into it, the more complex it got. And of course, in a short amount of time, it's not going to be very accurate. You might not come to a final answer. What is the expectation of the consultants at this point?
The expectation of the consultant is very clear. You need to showcase how you can structure all the problems. You need to make sure that your structure and approach is comprehensive, that you are covering all the components. So one of the most typical mistakes, which is done in that real case, is that people are purely focusing just on B2C segment. So basically on the private individuals and on the households, while they're leaving completely the business aspect, whole B2B with the hotels, with hospitals and other businesses. So for instance, if you are able to showcase that both on the top level as on more granular level, as you go more into details, that you are able to showcase that you are always thinking structurally and comprehensively, that you are including all possible components, then you are fulfilling the expectation. And what Ali was struggling a little bit about, just as a secret, probably if it was a real interview by that company, Ali would have not passed that case. I mean, it's not that bad because we have a secure environment, and Ali was still a very solid performance, given that it was actually the first time that we practiced the case with you together. But in the real settings, it would be okay performance, but it would still not be enough to secure the offer. So the expectation would have been that Ali would have had a very positive energy and driving the case throughout the whole process, not letting himself down, because I was already providing him some tips and tricks. You probably have recognized this during the interview. For the real interview, this is already a good basis and a good starting point, but there would be even more things expected there. I hope that I was able to bring you more light on your question.
Yeah, I got the answer I was looking for. I think what you're trying to say is Ali was asking the right questions. He was using the right approach, but maybe a little more focus on the conversation side and more driving the case. Like twice you mentioned to him, think out loud. What are you thinking? So maybe, I don't know if that's what you mean, that have a more conversation, what you're thinking, what is your thought process, rather than you actually coming up with a number. Because his direction was perfect. I mean, he was going through B2B, he was going through B2C, he was looking at hospitals, and he was asking about different kinds of mattresses.
Yeah, and then, Sarim, what happens? If Ali would have simply come with a number 45, I would not be in a position to even verify where he did the mistake. If I wouldn't have pushed him to think out loud. And the interviewer would not push you to think out loud, because he will expect you just to think out loud. The real devil is always in the details. This last 10% of your efforts that you need to make to really make sure that you pass it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, cool. Thank you very much on behalf of Consulting Masters and Rotterdam Business School for being here. I also want to pass the closing word to Oyas, and thanks all of you for joining our event today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Andre. Thank you so much, Consulting Master.
Thank you very much.
All right, have a great evening. Take care.
Thank you. Have a good evening. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. Bye.